Hello and welcome back to another episode of Building Digital Products with Tim and Sophie. Good girl. Today I want to talk about a couple of products that I have built in the past that failed to take off. And I want to start this story with the idea that developers eat food. And they live in houses, and so do user experience people, and so do product managers. Everyone involved in creating a product eats food, and generally they live in houses. Might not be true for every single one, and I make that point because product market fit is critical. If you want to keep a product alive, it needs to fit some market. There needs to be some way of generating revenue from that product. And you could say, we're going to have investors fund it so that it can get off the ground and all that, which is fine, but investors also want to see that there's going to be in some way, somehow, that this product is going to make money in some way. For the reasons stated earlier, people eat food. I just want to take you through a couple of the products that I've built in the past where we actually struggled to find product market fit. And hopefully, seeing these, you'll get maybe a little bit of hindsight that will help you in your next journey of building a product. So the first product that we built at my last company, at Medical Intelligence One, stemmed from this need that I felt as a physician when I was writing admission notes for patients. I would, you get a patient with liver failure, and there are some things that you're probably going to do for the great majority of patients with liver failure that come in, or chronic renal failure, or stroke, or any of these other common conditions. There are things that are pretty commonly done for each of these. And so I'd find myself at 2 a.m. with admissions rolling in and feeling the pressure, like, hey, okay, I've got to get this, got to get the next person admitted, but I also have to communicate what's going on with this person that's in front of me in a way that the nurses and everybody can sort of act on and take care of this person. And I found myself wishing that there was some way to just take what I'd written for that last person who had liver failure and bring it into my new note, and then just make whatever small changes I'd need to make. I thought, maybe that would be a faster way of getting my notes done. When I started my own business, that was one of the things that we decided to try to build. And in fact, we did build a recommendation system for that. I mean, I could see that there was, from my own experience, that there was a demand for that. And in talking with other physicians, I could see that, yes, there was a demand for that. So we prototyped it. We built something that really worked. As they're typing their note, it's seeing what they're typing in real time and offering suggestions that make it a lot faster. So instead of having to type out a whole line of text, I can just be like, oh yeah, add that to the plan, add that to the plan for this problem. And it was cool. It actually worked, and it performed well. It was flexible. It could apply to any field of practice where you have data to inform it. But there's that nagging issue of product market fit. How do we get from cool product to product that people are paying for? This is where I got to learn about the sales cycle for large healthcare organizations. They typically will take at least 18 months. Like the better ones will take 18 months to make a decision about adopting a technology like this. From the point of the technology being introduced to them in the first place until they actually sign on the dotted line to adopt the product. there are just a lot of committees and things that it has to pass through, and I mean, it's a complicated decision to implement something like this. That's a long sales cycle, and a startup with not much runway can't survive long enough to like get enough customers, or even one customer. We just didn't have the runway for that. The other piece of it was that although our tool was really cool, what some of the feedback we kept getting from physicians that we were testing this with was, yeah, that's great. If it can seamlessly integrate into my electronic medical record that I'm using, great, I would totally use it. But if it's something that I have to like click out into a different app to use or whatever, honestly, probably not. And I get it. I've been there. I probably would feel the same way if it was me trying to use the product. We didn't have control over what the electronic medical record let us integrate or not integrate. So those were two key things that kind of killed that product. Was we didn't have the control we needed over the interface that it had to integrate into, and the sales cycle was way too long. So we didn't have a viable way of getting that product into the market to the point where people could pay for it and feed our team to keep the product building. So we had to pivot away from that. The second tale I'm going to tell you is about rare disease diagnosis. And this is something that's still, like, I feel pretty passionately about this. So in medical school, I learned to recognize somewhere on the order of 200 diseases. But there are over 10,000 diseases that have been identified, and that number is continuing to grow every year. And I can tell you, you could put me in medical school for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to learn to recognize 10,000 diseases. And I'm not, that's normal. I'm a human being, and all doctors are human beings. And because of that, the average person takes about 7 years to get diagnosed if they have a rare condition. So we built a tool. We saw the clear need. We could see that this was a widespread need. We built a tool to address that need. And it actually, I think it worked pretty well. I used it on, well over 50 cases, and did find in many cases that the patients actually did meet clinical criteria for a diagnosis where they had previously been undiagnosed. And I was able to reach that point using Enola as one of the tools in my toolkit. That was the name of the rare disease search tool. So it was working. It was fulfilling a real market need, or real need, and it was working. But how do we get it to the point where it can make money? The best thing that I could think of was to basically build a telemedicine service dedicated to rare disease diagnosis. So if you're struggling to find a diagnosis with your own doctor, maybe you've even been referred around a bit, then you can come onto our service. We'll use Enola as part of the tool set, among other tools, and we'll have doctors who actually kind of specialize in just rare diseases in general, because it's a bit of a different beast trying to diagnose a rare disease. That was a way we could potentially monetize the app, is just have it be, play a supporting role in a telemedicine service that is a paid service. But then other factors were coming onto the scene too. We could see ChatGPT coming onto the scene, and we tested it out with rare disease diagnosis and found that it was actually working pretty well. it had its strengths and its weaknesses, just as the tool that we built had its strengths and its weaknesses. So I think both tools could have, potentially lived alongside each other and done some good. And then also the cost of genome sequencing is just falling precipitously. I just recently got my whole genome sequenced for under $400, which puts it into reach for a lot more people. And that price is continuing to fall. And something like 80% of rare diseases have a genetic basis. So that's a large segment of the market that will, I think, in the future be diagnosed, who are currently, those people are undiagnosed. So we could see that the tools coming down the pipeline were powerful. The tool that we had, yes, adds to that and could be helpful, but is it helpful enough to build a business around? And then also just this idea of building a telemedicine service. Yes, I could see there was demand for it. I tested that demand and there really was. It's something people really wanted. But we, as a company, didn't have the runway to make that happen. It's a very complicated endeavor, starting a telemedicine service. And we just weren't the right team for it. We didn't have the funding, and we weren't going to get the funding. I've talked with enough venture capital firms and that sort of thing to recognize we just weren't there yet. We didn't have enough traction. We didn't have the things they were looking for, and in this funding environment, they were looking for later stage companies in general, at least at the time that we would have needed the money. So those are two cases where there was a real need, and there was a product that was actually fulfilling that need well, but the forces of the market just didn't line up. And our position as a company, we weren't positioned to take advantage of the opportunities that were there. So those are things you have to consider too. Those are harder things to consider. It takes understanding the outside world and how your product interacts with the outside world, how it's going to fit into that larger milieu, but ultimately it will determine the success or failure of your product and whether you can keep building on it or not. So I wanted to share those with you. Sorry, go check it out. Got a helicopter going over. Sorry about the noise. That's it. I think Sophie and I are gonna play a little more fetch here. Ready? Good girl. And we'll see you all next time.